Don't waste your life. I think one of the joys of my life has been having children. My wife and I have 3 fantastic daughters. And when you have kids, you often think about what it is that you'd want to say to them. And I think the thing I would want to say to anyone's child, don't waste your life. This passage that we are looking at out of Mark chapter 7, and if you're not there, you can turn there. You heard it read for us by Keegan. Thank you again, Keegan. This passage is where Jesus is having a conversation because people are messing with him. They're messing with Jesus and they're messing with his people, and the conversation is because they're observing God's people doing something different than everybody else. Everybody else is so worried about the tradition that they're also not thinking about the truth. So more worried about tradition than truth. And they question him, and earlier in the passage say, what's up with your people, Jesus? How come your people aren't following the traditions? How come they're eating with dirty hands? And Jesus does this beautiful twist and then takes them through a little bit of an anatomy lesson and says, actually, what messes you up is not what you put in, but what you have in. And these words, eventually, he lays them out all the way to say, because when you put something bad inside you, it eventually comes back out. But if what's inside you is messed up, it comes out too. As I've looked at this passage and thought about what does it mean to serve a greater than God, I thought it would be appropriate for your campus pastor to tell you how I've blown it. Sometimes when I open God's word, I read without even trying to understand. This reminder to me was given back in a few years ago. I served at the church that you see here, and when I served at that church, I served in several roles, eventually becoming the senior pastor. When I became the senior pastor of this church, here's what happens when you're the pastor. Everybody thinks when it's time to pray that you should pray. So pastors get asked to pray all the time. So, it's just kind of a thing. I just hope that if you are somewhere with your pastor, you realize you can pray too, okay? Look at somebody next to you and say these words, you can pray too. Yeah, you can pray too. But people were always asking me, Pastor, can you pray? So on Tuesdays, we would have meetings, like different staff meetings, deacons meetings. We'd have these meetings on Tuesday night. And we were having these community meetings. We were trying to figure out how will we impact the world. And what I remember about this was we're having this meeting, and I'm asked to open in prayer. And actually, I am praying, and I am talking to God. When you get close to God, sometimes it's just a personal thing. You have a conversation better than you have with your roommate or with your friends. It's just a different kind of conversation. So my conversation with Jesus went something like this. I said, Dear God, I hate meetings. I hate them. I do. I really do hate meetings. I feel like I want to do something, not just meet and talk about it to death. So I just said, Lord, I hate meetings. Would you please show up in some amazing way so we don't waste our time here? Amen. And the problem was, even in my kind of smart aleck way, I was praying and not believing. I'm glad that God didn't damage me physically in that moment, because I don't know if I was really praying to him or trying to say something deep to the people that I was with, but God heard anyway, and he showed up. And so what happens is, I have to tell you a little bit about where we were. In the building, we had all these rooms, and we were in what they called the friendship room. Big sign outside, friendship room, these super soft chairs that were in there. We didn't have a lobby, we had a narthex. So we were just off the lobby, just off the narthex, and we were in this room in these nice cushy chairs. And about 90 minutes into the meeting, and our church was located out in kind of the suburbs of town. We were on the edge of town, 5 or 6 miles from downtown. And this woman walks in. And the woman walks in, and she's got all of this heavy, heavy clothing on. She's got lots of stuff with her. She's physically got some bags in her hand. Her hair is messed up. And she looks like she's what? Homeless, right? Like we know what a homeless person looks like. So she looked to me like she was homeless. But in fact, because we were talking about this very topic of how we're going to impact the world, how we're going to make changes, I actually thought she was an actor. I said, who in the world paid this lady to come in here and do this? This is amazing. In fact, I remember getting really physically close to her so I could smell her, like I could know what a homeless person would smell like. I'm like, this lady doesn't even smell homeless. And within a few minutes, though, she came in, and there were also some benches, some beautiful benches, and some of the people were sitting on benches, and suddenly she kind of waddled her way in between people to sit down, and someone was like, trying to move, and I said, ma'am, there's a seat right over there. She turned to me, and she goes, listen, I'm homeless. I sleep in the street. I can sit where I want. Okay, well, this is going to be a great night. Eventually, as this conversation continued, we realized that our meeting was not going to happen and another meeting was going to happen. And honestly, until this moment, I still thought this was not a real person. I said, this person is an actor. And so as we were kind of talking, at some point, she turned to me and she goes, you think being black is a big deal? How about being mentally ill and a big mouth? I got some problems. You don't have any. That was the conversation we were having. And so at some point, somebody made a call. There was another leader in the room. He looked at someone, gave him the eye. They turned around and made a call. Who did they call? The police, because after all, if you were in the friendship room in your church, who else would you call, right? You'd call the police. And so even in this moment, I was not able to be honest with myself that I didn't understand what was happening, but I knew something was wrong. I hope that when you go places and you know something's wrong, actually that you would step into these things. So when the person had been gone for a long time, I went out to see what was going on, and I realized that they were making a call without a plan. And as I stood at the counter, because they went into the church office to make the call, there's a counter in there. I stood at the counter. I can hear the police officer laughing hysterically. So the person's trying to describe to him, look, we got this homeless person in our church, and and the police officer's laughing, and this is what I hear him say. So grateful for this moment. I hope, by the way, that you go and hug a police officer, because sometimes they got good theology. He says, you said there's a homeless person in your church? Well, you're in a church. What do you want us to do about that? So I motioned to the person, hey, put the phone down. They said, no, we're going to get some help here. I said, have you ever slept in a shelter? Sometimes words just flip out of your mouth. You don't even know where they came from. Why am I talking about a shelter, and why am I even thinking about this? But I'm thinking, I never slept in a shelter, and this person never slept. I don't know. I'm thinking this person definitely never slept in a shelter. I said, have you ever slept in a shelter? Just put the phone down for a moment, because now I'm believing it's a real person. So we go back into the friendship room, and we continue to have a conversation. Eventually, I realized there's only one thing I should do. I got to call my wife. So I go to call my wife. I call home because I'm thinking something. Do you know what I'm thinking? What am I thinking? I'm thinking maybe I should bring this person home. Don't clap. I promise you, there is nothing good in this story about me. Because what I was thinking was this. I'm not going home tonight yet. I got meetings to go to. I got things to go to. I'm calling my wife so she can come down here and pick this lady up, take her home so I can go on and get the meetings done that I need to get done tonight. I had several more stops to make, and I'm thinking, I don't know how to do this. So I call my wife. I call home. My daughter says, Dad, she's at the ladies' Bible study. Oh, yeah. Hang up the phone. Call the other number. My wife is at the ladies' Bible study teaching that night on how we should love everybody. They say, Reverend, she's in a Bible study right now. Could you just hang on? I said, no, get her right now. It's an emergency. She gets to the phone. What's the matter? I said, look, I need you to come to the church right now and pick up. Hang on a second. What's your name? I don't even know her name. We had been together for 30 minutes talking. I didn't even know her name. What's your name? Claire. Gina, I need you to come, hang on a second. Claire, do you steal? Because here's what I'm like, we're having this gut level conversation. She's telling me about being black. I better know if she's a thief. Like, I gotta know, let's just talk. So I say to her, do you steal? She said, I've never stolen anything since 19. She starts telling me her whole life story. I said, it's okay. Gina, come pick up Claire, bring her home. She can stay on our porch, but no further. Don't let her go into the house. She can stay on the porch. Three-season porch. I don't know, maybe it was October. It was about this time right now. It wasn't super cold out. I mean, we stayed out there. So I said, she can stay on the porch. There's electricity out there. She'll be fine. So now I stressed her, do not let her in the house. And then I forget all about her. I think maybe 4 or 5 hours pass before I actually come home, and I come in through another door, and I realize, there's someone, my word, she's on the porch. So I go inside, and my wife said, did you talk to her? I said, well, not really. She said, that lady is a hoot. She is so funny. I said, you did not let her in our house, did you? She said, no. I said, okay, good. I locked the door. And I realized in the morning when our daughter came to our room and said, Mommy, Daddy, I think somebody's outside. I said, yeah, we have guests here tonight. They said, no, Daddy, we don't have guests, because if we had guests, you wouldn't lock the door. See, I was busy having hospitality without kindness. So now I got to explain to my child how we did have somebody in the house last night. And then what happened was this lady just took over. Claire just took over my life. I really pray that somebody will get into your life and fix your broken Christianity so that you will learn how to love, because they will not let you go. She just wouldn't let me go. Claire turns around and says, I just need to ride downtown. I'm like, good, let me drop her back off, because that's where the homeless people stay, downtown, not uptown like where I am. So I'm like, hey, Claire, no problem. And when you're doing this, when you're dropping somebody off, let me tell you the things that you say to them. You're like, hey, guess what? Anytime you need anything, just let me know. Glad to help. Hope I see you again. And as I'm driving her downtown, I actually see some of my friends' houses that are down there too. I'm like, hey, there's my friend over there, and there's my friend. You can stop by their house anytime. A few hours later, I go back to church, I get a phone call. Dyson, I got this homeless lady in my bathroom right now. She won't come out. What did you do? Hospitality without kindness. But you know what? She had walked up from downtown. She knew how to walk back, and she came back to the church, and the church secretary came to my door. She goes, Pastor, she's laying down. She's back. She's in the narthex. And there she was, sleeping in the church. I said, well, she can't sleep in the church. We got to do something. So I'm like, you know what we did? I'm like, well, she already stayed in my house one time. That's enough. Like, I did my one off. So we went and we put her in a hotel. That seemed reasonable, $62.50 for a night, and another night, and another night, and another night. She stayed there for several weeks in that hotel while we stumbled around trying to figure out whether or not we could actually love her. What ended up happening was, and she figured out that we were friends because somehow we had done something, so we're going to be friends. So she kept calling me, Pastor Greg, this is Sister Claire. How you doing today? Pastor Greg, what's going on? Pastor Greg, you got anything for me to eat? Pastor Greg, Pastor Greg, Pastor Greg, Pastor Greg! Oh, my word. By the time she came to Sunday, she goes, Pastor Greg, who's picking me up for church? I'm like, I didn't really know. Sometimes you choke. So I said, well, I'll pick you up. I wasn't going to pick her up. I was going to get somebody to pick her up, but that person was late. And so when they got there, they said, she's not at the hotel. Claire has a deep sense of justice. And so she just started walking to church. And when she finally saw somebody on the side of the road helping somebody else with a broken down car, she said, there's a mean black man at this church down the road that was going to give me a ride, and he didn't. So can you give me a ride to church? That guy was so angry. He showed up in church with her. He's like, where's the guy? Show me the guy that left you, Claire. And then Claire said, and I need one of those soft, comfy chairs from the other room. I can't sit on this hard bench. And so I see the ushers bringing a chair down the aisle to lay this chair down for Claire to have a beautiful chair to sit in during church. After the first service, she said, I'm hungry. I'm going to need something to eat. I said, well, Claire, we have a little fellowship time. She said, I can't eat that. I need real food. I started reaching for my wallet. I grabbed somebody. I said, hey, listen, just take Claire down the street here. Can you take her down to Quiznos? She said, I don't eat Quiznos. I said, take her to Olive Garden. The fella said, I'm sorry, I don't have time to do that. I said, listen, just drop her off. Claire looked at me and said, and who would want to eat alone? If you think that there's a version of Greg Dyson that you like, I want to tell you, Claire Mendoza was used by God to fix what was broken in me. Claire began to tell me things like, she said, homeless people need bicycle flags. I'm like, Claire, why do homeless people need bicycle flags? She said, because when they sleep in the streets, they'll get run over by the plows, so we put bicycle flags so they know where we are. Eventually, we took groups of people downtown and we began to find all the homeless people sleeping on the streets in our city. At first, it was just to get Claire to stop talking, really. And we went there, and it ended up that, we were there for a couple of hours, and then a couple of more hours, and then pretty soon we told people, hey, if you want to go out with us on a Monday night to do this homeless outreach, and you need to be somewhere, don't come with us, because we're going to just stay out till we get done. We had to find a place to meet, so we met in the basketball hall, at the parking lot of the Basketball Hall of Fame, because it was like a place everybody knew. So we met there. Eventually, the people in the Hall of Fame, all those people started helping us. We gathered blankets and all kinds of things. And the next thing you know, we're talking about this, and we realized we were willing to help on Monday, but not on Sunday. It was great to go out in the street and help somebody, but actually to help somebody at church seemed like such a difficult thing. One day while we're driving around, and now hundreds of people are helping us, several colleges have gotten involved, we're driving around and we said, you know what? We need to thank because we're finding out all the resources that were around. We said we need to thank people for the resources that have been given. And so we're going to take a trip. So we took Claire and we went down south just a little bit. I had no idea what was going to happen when we got to Washington. We weren't there to promote some particular party or to lobby for some thing. We just wanted to thank people for being willing to help people that we struggle to help. You see, the government was willing to help, but the church was having some issues. As all of this was happening, what I didn't realize was you and I, me, Greg, needs to get comfortable living our Christianity without limits. If there's a message today, this is it. Don't worry about what's on the outside of you. What's on the inside needs Jesus. Every day, every moment, more than you can imagine. While we were helping Claire, one of the young men who came to help, he was in college. What I remember was it just overwhelmed him. He was just like, man, we need to make sure Claire is okay. And so one day he went to his parents and said, do you think we can adopt Claire? And so they did. They adopted her. And year after year, we would go back home and he would call and say, hey, come over and see Claire. She's in the hospital. Or come over and see Claire. We've got her in the apartment. Or come over and see Claire. And one day he called to say, Claire's gone home to be with the Lord. And when he did, this is what I remember, that hundreds of us had had our lives changed by somebody that we were uncomfortable being around. Just think of it. There could be somebody on this campus that you're uncomfortable with, and actually God is going to use that relationship, that person, to change you. So what we have to think about is, how can we live our lives without limits? How can we not waste our life? I don't know. Maybe there's some things that are happening. This Bible, we'll have 100 of them next Friday on the edge of this stage on something, because you don't put a Bible down on the ground. We'll put something down and you'll be able to write notes. We're giving these Bibles away. There's a student here who said, hey, there's some kids in our neighborhood that need Bibles. So we have the Bibles and you're going to write notes and lay your hands on these Bibles and bless them. Some of you are going to show up next Tuesday and you're going to pray like you never prayed before, and you're going to see God do things like he's never done in your life before. All of this to say, family, Don't waste your life.